I read chapter 13 of the Legal Environment of Business. Basically, this chapter talked a whole lot about a lot of rights, which in this kind of way of saying rights would be a way of rights having something like a piece of land or having the right to own something or ride a vehicle. Basically, the chapter first talked about was properties. A property is a bundle of rights in relation to others to possess, use, and dispose of a tangible or intangible object. This basically means that this can give you right of having property over something like a vehicle or a building. Real property is land and everything permanently attached to it. This basically means that when you buy a house, you would get anything with it that includes a front yard or a backyard or any necessities that would come with it. The chapter also discussed about some rights. There is water rights, which is the legal ability to use water falling across or underneath one's property. And then there's also mineral rights. These are the legal ability to dig or mine the minerals from the earth below the surface of one's land. Another one is fee simple absolute. This is the right to own and possess the land against all others without conditions. It basically means that you can actually take someone's land with them, and there's not really much that they can do about it. It also talks about conditional estate, which is the right to own and possess the land subject to a condition whose happening or not happening will terminate the estate. The chapter also goes into details about many forms of papers that some people would want to sign. That includes a deed, which is the instrument of convenience of property, which basically would say that you would own something, like, say, a house. Life estate is the right to own and possess the land until one dies. This basically means that you get to have the piece of property you have, whether that's a house or like a farm, or it will stay with you until you eventually die. This is kind of close to life insurance that would get passed on to a family member if something unexpected would happen to you. It also talks about future interest, which is the present right to possess and own the land in the future. This basically would mean that you would have authority from the person who currently owns the land to basically have it, whether, say, that person dies or decides that they don't really want it anymore. A leasehold is the right to possess property for an agreed upon period of time started in a lease. This basically would mean that you would get to own something, but this would only be permanent. This would be temporary. This would not be something that's permanent. A lease is a contract that transfers a possessory interest in a property from the owner to the tenant. This basically means that you would sign up for anything. It would basically be yours. You can lease anything, like from a car or, say, a vehicle. A license is a temporary, revertible right to be on someone else's property. This would basically mean that if you had to see somebody, like, say, if you were with an agency like the FBI or the CIA, you had to show your license or warrant to show them that you were allowed to be there. There's co-ownership, which is the ownership of land by multiple persons or business organizations, where all tenants have an equal right to occupy all of the property. This is basically means that more people can help out if they want to. This is usually something seen a lot throughout life, as most people have been credited as co-something, whether that's like co-owner, co-creator, or co-developer. They also had talked about other types of properties. There's personal property, which is a property that is not a real property but may be tangible or intangible. A tangible property is actually a personal property that is material and movable, and a intangible property is a personal property that does not have a physical form and is usually evidence in writings. Aside from having properties, there's also different types of the ways you can have your own property. There's a title, which is the ownership of property, which means that you would be entitled to having something, whether that's like a house, a car, or land. And bailment was the relationship in which one person transfers possession of personal property to another to be used in an agreed upon manner for an agreed upon period of time. This basically means that someone would agree to this to help bail them out. From reading about this chapter, it helped expand in my mind a lot about the kinds of agreements that people would sign up with. I've actually heard of these agreements, although I've never once actually learned about the difference between them. It did also show me how each of these differences can be altered, as this can be something that actually will affect people if something goes wrong with their business.